People don't realize that when they decide to become parents, and sure as hell no one's going to tell you because they think it'll reveal them as someone who's doing it wrong. But I'll tell you. I don't want to get down on The Wild Robot because it is a decent movie. It's a good time at the movies or on streaming at home. It was our New Year's Day movie for family and friends, and everyone had a good time. But there was something just a little odd about it for me, and I think I put my finger on it. But for the 3 people who haven't seen it, here's the plot, and it's very simple. A container ship carrying a shipment of robots encounters a storm, and one of the containers with a Universal Dynamics robot, ROSM 1734, washes ashore and activates as though it had been delivered. But it's on a remote island with nothing but wildlife around, so it uses its artificial intelligence to adapt and carry out its primary function, which is just to help, to identify tasks that need doing, and to accomplish them. The native animals don't have much use for that until the robot, who we'll later call Roz, so let's call her Roz, while escaping a bear attack, stumbles down a cliff and destroys a bird's nest. And we briefly see the dead mama bird and the shattered eggs, and it's very sad. But there's one egg left, and that's a gosling who we'll soon know as Brightbill. Roz meets up with a possum family who confirm that Brightbill has imprinted on Roz, and now Roz is responsible as the gosling's mother. Her task completion program activates with a clear mission. Brightbill needs to eat, to learn to swim, and most important, learn to fly before fall, before winter sets in, or he won't be able to migrate and he'll die here. As we enter the second act, Roz becomes closer with a fox who we've met named Fink, who previously was only interested in eating Brightbill, but now helps Roz navigate parenthood in the forest, initially using Roz's skills to his own advantage, but later developing more of a heart. And that's something Roz must now do in order to complete her task, to help Brightbill, and also later to survive as Roz, and not just ROSM 1734. As Brightbill reaches adolescence, he begins to understand the uniqueness of his little family compared to the other geese who shun them and who inform Brightbill that he's a runt. But even more significant, that Roz, who they regard as a monster, killed his natural family, albeit unintentionally. So this drives a wedge between them, between Roz and Brightbill. And with time ticking down to winter, we have our stakes and our urgency. And that really keeps, in our family anyway, kept young and old really riveted on the screen. Okay, Roz goes looking for spare parts one day at her crash site, mainly for a transmitter that she needs to get home, and meets another ROSM unit whose programming only underscores for her how her parenting mission has already begun to change Roz's own code on a fundamental level, as she's been rewriting her own code out of necessity to continue with her mission. At a certain point, Roz has somewhat given up, but Fink convinces Roz that they must get Brightbill to fly, or neither one of them will truly be fulfilling their nature, their coding, as it were. And despite the hurt feelings between them, and the mockery of the other geese, and Brightbill's physical limitations, Brightbill channels that anger and learns to fly. Winter arrives. Roz and Brightbill and Fink all say goodbye, and Brightbill flies away without any exchange of thanks or familial love of any kind. And that leaves a void in them both, as it would in any family. With winter hitting hard, Roz's own departure is delayed, and now a huge storm forces all the forest friends that we met throughout the film to hunker down together and resist their natural instincts to eat one another, just for now, because, as Roz tells them,
sometimes, to survive, we must become more than we were programmed to be.
The animals survive until spring, and now the geese can return. But Roz sees from a distance that Brightbill is now a hero, a leader among the geese, and not wanting to add any new stigma because, they still regard her as a monster, she stays away. And now she summons Universal Dynamics to come and get her. Her job is done. But when they arrive, Roz is conflicted, seeing the austere, unfeeling robots sent to collect her. And Brightbill and Fink, in the end, help her to escape, rallying all the forest creatures to defeat the robots, while saving the island from a devastating fire that the battle causes. Bright Bill and Roz finally acknowledge their family bond, and a new era of creature cooperation begins on the island. But the company knows where they are now, and so Roz decides to save them all some future pain. She must return. The final question: will love remain imprinted on Roz after they wipe her memory and reassign her? Is love that fundamental a change? Will she remain somehow Roz? Movie trivia: dig up a Warren Beatty film called Heaven Can Wait. Same ending, basically. And evidence that we retell these sorts of stories with these same sorts of themes and questions over and over in a culture because they matter to us and because they hit us, on a fundamental level. Okay, Bright Bill tracks her down one day to find out, is she still Roz? And we'll leave it there. Watching this film as a family, as I said, everyone had a good time, even as it's a little by the numbers in terms of plot sometimes. My wife and I even had the same comment, in fact, somewhere in the middle, once the primary plot goal was achieved. We thought the movie might be over. And it could have been over if it were a lesser film. And we've seen plenty of lesser films, believe me. And we would have been sort of satisfied with the story leaving off there. But the movie takes a chance on the audience, and I do appreciate that. I thought it could have been more tightly woven, but we have to give credit where credit is due. The movie is also really kind of two movies then. So what's happening at around the halfway mark? Well, we're already getting the final training montage for Bright Bill to be ready to leave the island. And maybe 5 minutes after that, still squarely in the middle of the movie, Bright Bill is gone. Roz the robot checks off her final task, and the stated goal of the narrative, for her to keep Bright Bill alive and teach him to fly before winter migration, that's over. And the movie is only about half over. It spends the rest of the runtime on its real theme. What's important in life, in relationships, in family, and in our own identity as individuals. So Roz and Bright Bill and Fink and the other characters, to some degree, have realized that they get to decide who they are and what matters to them and what family means to them in this instance. And not as some novelty just for the film, but as something with more permanence and value on a fundamental level as human beings. It's part of the human nature. It's probably one of our primeval survival instincts, that we can overrule our instincts, rewrite our code to survive when we need to. The movie's about a robot surrounded by animals, but that doesn't matter. Now I see people questioning, how are these animals going to survive without eating each other now? They're not really animals. They're audience proxies. The movie is about being human, just as all good stories really are. Who changes? How do they change? And why do they change? And why might you change? Why might I change if we get that much while watching a story unfold? And that's hard, but it's one of the most important things, in my opinion, that you can pass on to your kids. And that can get messy, too, because it's way too easy to do badly, if you know what I mean. When a movie starts preaching to me, I'm out. There's nothing worse than a movie with a lesson plan, with a chip on its shoulder about something that's so on the nose that it's like sitting through a lecture. A good story should always be sure of where it's going and at the same time be afraid of where it's headed, if you can hold those two things in your mind at the same time. The plot is over, the goal is reached, the thing the characters thought they needed most is attained, but it turns out that what they thought they needed wasn't all they needed. Turns out the job Roz was needed for, parenting, wasn't just something you could quantify and put down on paper as a checklist. The journey changes you while you take it. And you're not the same person who took it at the end. You're a new person now with something indelible printed on you. Your soul, if you want to call it that and be trite, but it's true. something that you could never have seen coming or predicted. What The Wild Robot spends its second half on is, well, two things. It's an action sequence involving the Universal Dynamics company trying to reclaim their missing robot. That's a lot of fun. Only for Roz also to reject that identity, that she's not that person or robot anymore. But she has to fight for that. She has to decide that she wants to be Roz, the parent. She has that new goal to stay until Bright Bill returns to complete her transformation. And that's her goal now. And also allow him to complete his, to recognize that they love each other as a family, despite how unlikely it was that they would ever even meet. And fully realize their own self-determination and identity that they've discovered as being valid in the world. We're all a collection of experiences that we've had and others who we've met and learned from, our own unique blend of those things, and not just another member of a flock or a line of robots. And it's a little on the nose for that, but you can forgive the film because it's well done and it's fun to watch while it's making these points sort of in the background. And it has some honesty, too, about parenting that I really appreciate. How the parenting journey changes people. No one who gives parenting, raising another human being, an honest try, and I mean a try from their heart. And I don't think everyone does. The absentee father rate in this country is embarrassing. It's like 25%. No one who does give it an honest try comes out the same on the other side. And even doing our best, parenting changes you because it takes everything you have to give, and it whittles you away down to just your core assets inside, your core identity, because you don't have time, energy, or resources for anything else most of the time if you're giving it an honest try. And it even breaks you in some ways, as we see with Roz the Wild Robot. The identity you started out with, the identity you thought you had, like Roz here in this movie, you got to rewrite your own program, your own identity often, quite often without any idea whether you're doing anything right at all. And parenting removes parts of you that you thought you needed and once thought you couldn't function without. Good parents are all broken in some way and pieced back together out of necessity. And I don't mean that in a doom and gloom sort of way, but I truly believe that. And it makes them truly unique inside. And stronger, I hope, than when they started. And if you put your kids ahead of you, it's like being on a lifeboat sometimes. And what can I put overboard today to stay mostly afloat? And it comes down to parts of you in the end. Sometimes. People don't realize that when they decide to become parents. And sure as hell, no one's going to tell you because they think it'll reveal them as someone who's doing it wrong. But I'll tell you, you got to be flexible with the self-image to be a parent. And it's not just what you take away from yourself, it's what you add to yourself too. Whether that's patience, more than you ever thought you had before, more resilience, or even more love than you thought you had in you. The kind that doesn't need anything back if you're going to give it that honest try. And I'm not talking about myself. Anyone who's raised someone, even semi-successfully, is kind of my hero right now. Actively raised someone, not as a spectator. Okay, so watch The Wild Robot, especially you parents. Old parents will recognize the truth in it. New parents, you might have a freak out, but it's a helpful sort of freak out, and it's vindicating in the end, I think. And it's a good movie with an unconventional structure for a big budget animated film, and your kids are going to love it. Enjoy it. Watch it with an open mind and an accessible heart. Rewrite your program to suit. And I'll see you next time.